The millionaire is stunned when he meets the new housekeeper and notices the necklace she's wearing. Welcome to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more stories. Emma slung her bag over her shoulder, casting one last glance at the orphanage that had been her home for as long as she were a child. The grand, weathered building was a mix of fond memories and moments of isolation, but it had shaped her. With a deep breath, she turned towards the world outside, her heart pounding with a mixture of nerves and anticipation for the future. On that sunny day, Emma was ready to step into a new chapter of her life. Thanks to the help of the orphanage's director, Emma had landed a job as a housemaid at the estate of Henry Anderson, a well-known tycoon in the real estate world. The opportunity felt like something out of reach, yet here she was, standing before it. As she arrived at the imposing mansion, Emma was greeted by Martin, the family butler, who had been with the Andersons for decades. His stern expression and stiff posture unsettled Emma, but she kept her chin up, determined to make a good impression. Martin led her through the estate in a brisk, formal manner, offering little warmth. "You must understand the importance of this position," Martin said as they walked through the grand hallways. "The Anderson family has high expectations, and mistakes are not tolerated." Emma nodded, hiding her nerves behind a composed face. "I understand, Mr. Martin. I will do my best." The first few days were rough. Martin found fault in almost everything she did, making sure to point out even the smallest errors. The pressure weighed on Emma with each stern glance, but she refused to let it defeat her. Her resolve was stronger than his criticism. Rising before the sun each day, Emma threw herself into her duties with determination. She cleaned every room, polished the furniture, and kept the kitchen spotless. Despite Martin's constant critiques, Emma absorbed every lesson, focused on mastering the tasks before her. One morning, while dusting the living room's chandeliers, Martin approached her. "You left a smudge on the dining table last night," he said sharply. "Unacceptable." Emma felt a lump in her throat but swallowed her pride. "I'm sorry, Mr. Martin. I'll be more careful next time." Martin sighed, his doubt still evident. "We'll see. This job requires perfection." Even with the constant strain, Emma found solace in small pockets of time, especially in the garden. It became her sanctuary, a place where she could breathe and reflect on her goals. Sitting among the flowers and listening to the birds, she remembered why she was here, to create a better future for herself. That night, after another long day of work, Emma collapsed into bed, exhausted but proud of her progress. Though Martin's critical eye never wavered, she felt herself growing and improving each day. With determination in her heart, she closed her eyes, ready to take on whatever came next. The sun had barely risen when Emma was already up, beginning another busy day at the Anderson estate. Her goal remained clear: to prove she could handle her duties with precision, despite Martin's constant disapproval. The kitchen, a place she found solace in, was her favorite part of the house. That morning she worked quietly, cleaning the counters, lost in thoughts about her future. So focused on her tasks, Emma didn't hear the determined footsteps approaching. Henry Anderson, the head of the household, had just returned from an exhausting business trip. His face showed signs of weariness, but there was also a deeper sadness in his eyes, one that had been there since the disappearance of his daughter. Entering the kitchen in search of a simple glass of water, what he saw instead left him frozen in place. Emma, unaware of his presence, was diligently cleaning. But what caught Henry's attention wasn't her work. It was the heart-shaped necklace hanging from her neck. That necklace, it was unmistakable. It looked just like the one his daughter had been wearing the day she disappeared. "Excuse me," Henry said, his voice unsteady as he tried to keep his emotions in check. Emma spun around, surprised to see him. "Good morning, Mr. Anderson," she greeted him, her nerves creeping in. Henry stepped closer, his eyes never leaving the necklace. "That necklace, it's beautiful. Have you had it for long?" Emma instinctively touched the pendant, a nervous habit she had developed over the years. "Yes, sir. I've had it for as long as I was a child. It's the only thing I have from my past," she replied. So a flood of emotions hit Henry. The necklace, it couldn't be just a coincidence. He needed to learn more about Emma, her past, and how she came to possess that necklace. "Interesting," Henry murmured, trying to mask the thoughts racing through his mind. "Well, I hope you're settling in here." "I'm doing my best, Mr. Anderson," Emma responded, feeling a bit more at ease with the seemingly friendly conversation, unlike her tense exchanges with Martin. Henry nodded and retrieved the water he initially came for, but his mind was now swirling with questions. He had to dig deeper into Emma's history and the story behind the necklace. Later that day, Henry returned to his office and made a phone call to an old friend, the owner of a well-regarded detective agency. He quickly laid out the situation, requesting an in-depth investigation into Emma's background. Something deep down told him that this young woman was connected to his past in a way he never anticipated. Meanwhile, Emma went about her day, completely unaware of the investigation that was now unfolding around her. The necklace she had always cherished, a relic of her forgotten past, had now become the center of a mystery that could change her life forever. Henry was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Sitting back in his leather chair, phone in hand, he reflected on the brief conversation he'd had with his detective friend Mark, who assured him that the investigation would begin immediately. Henry knew he couldn't leave any detail unexplored if he was to get to the bottom of this. As Emma continued with her daily routine, unaware of what was happening behind the scenes, she maintained her focus on her duties, striving to prove her worth. But beneath the surface, a storm was brewing, one that would soon change everything. Henry knew he couldn't wait any longer. He needed answers, and was certain that only a detailed investigation would provide them. He picked up the phone and called Mark again, formalizing his request. "Mark, I want you and your team to do whatever it takes to dig up everything you can about Emma's past. Leave no stone unturned and spare no resources." "We need answers quickly," Henry stated firmly. "Don't worry, Henry. We'll start immediately. I'll keep you updated on any progress," Mark replied, understanding the weight of the task at hand. A few days later, Mark reached out to Henry to arrange a meeting. The urgency in his voice told Henry that something significant had been uncovered. They met in a quiet cafe in the city center, away from prying eyes. "Henry, my team has made substantial progress," Mark began without delay. "Emma was found in a park 17 years ago, when she was about 2 years old. She was taken to an orphanage shortly after and lived there until recently, when she left." Henry listened intently, his heart beating faster. "And the necklace? Is there any information on who might have left her there?" Mark shook his head. "Not yet, but we're reviewing all the records we can find and interviewing anyone who might recall something. What we do know is that someone left her in that park with that necklace, and it doesn't seem like it was random." Henry took a deep breath, trying to process the information. "So, Emma has been living without any knowledge of her past, without knowing who her parents are." "Exactly. The orphanage has no additional details, only that she was discovered with the necklace. We're working to track down any potential witnesses or clues regarding who left her there," Mark explained. The thought of his lost daughter was more present in Henry's mind than ever. Every new detail from the investigation seemed to pull him closer to a truth he both dreaded and desired. He wondered how many times he had unknowingly been on the verge of discovering the truth. "Keep investigating, Mark. I need all the answers you can find. If Emma is indeed my daughter, I cannot let this chance slip away," Henry said, his determination evident. Mark nodded, fully understanding the gravity of the situation. "We'll keep at it, Henry. I'll update you with any new findings." Back at the mansion, Henry tried to maintain his composure, but the anxiety was impossible to hide. He observed Emma from a distance, imagining how her life might change dramatically in the near future. Every movement she made, every gesture, reminded him of his lost daughter. One afternoon, as Emma was tidying up the library, Henry entered unexpectedly. She looked up, startled, but smiled politely. "Can I help you with something, Mr. Anderson?" Henry hesitated briefly. "No, I just wanted to see how your work is going. Are you settling in all right?" "Yes, sir. I'm learning a lot and am grateful for the opportunity," Emma replied earnestly. Henry's eyes lingered on the necklace, shining in the soft library light, and he felt his chest tighten. "Keep up the good work, Emma. You're doing well." As he left the room, Emma couldn't shake the strange feeling that something deeper was happening. The days seemed to crawl by for Henry as the investigation into Emma's past continued. Each discovery from Mark seemed to draw him closer to a truth he longed for, but feared. When Mark finally called to arrange an urgent meeting, Henry knew the moment of truth had arrived. Mark arrived at the Anderson estate with a thick envelope in hand and was promptly led to Henry's office, where the businessman was waiting with bated breath. "Henry, we've gathered all the information we could find. There's no doubt. Emma was found in a park 17 years ago and taken to the orphanage. All signs point to she is your daughter. The records confirm the story. The necklace Emma wears is the only link to her past," Mark said, handing the envelope to Henry. With trembling hands, Henry opened the envelope, carefully going through each document. Every detail aligned with what he remembered about his daughter's disappearance. He knew he needed to speak to Emma immediately. "Thank you, Mark. Now I need to talk to her," Henry said, standing from his chair. Emma was in the kitchen, finishing up with the utensils, when Martin called her, asking her to go to Henry's office. Nervously, she made her way there, unsure of what awaited her. Upon entering the office, she found Henry sitting behind his desk, his expression serious but kind. He gestured for her to sit across from him. "Emma, there's something very important we need to discuss," Henry began, his voice steady, but his emotions clearly intense. "Have you ever wondered about your past, about who your parents might be?" Emma nodded, her eyes filled with both curiosity and anxiety. "Yes, sir, I've always wondered, but I never had any clues apart from this necklace." Henry took a deep breath. "That necklace belonged to my daughter who disappeared 17 years ago. The information we've gathered about you matches the details of her disappearance. I believe there's a chance that you might be my daughter." Emma sat in stunned silence, trying to grasp what Henry had just said. The thought was both thrilling and overwhelming. "Are you saying I might be your daughter?" she asked softly. "Yes, Emma, but we need to be certain. I'd like us to do a DNA test to confirm it," Henry said, his voice gentle but firm. "That will give us the answers we need." Emma felt a whirlwind of emotions: hope, fear, disbelief. "Of course, sir. I'll take the test," she agreed, her voice shaking slightly. Henry smiled, visibly relieved. "Thank you, Emma. No matter what the results say, I want you to know how important you are here." The next day, Henry and Emma went to a specialized laboratory to have the DNA test done. The procedure was quick, but the wait for the results felt like a lifetime. Over the next few days, the tension at the mansion was palpable. Henry tried to carry on with his normal routine, but his thoughts were consumed by the upcoming results. He watched Emma closely, noticing little things in her appearance and mannerisms that reminded him of his lost daughter. He couldn't shake the feeling that fate had brought them together at last. Emma, for her part, was equally conflicted. The idea of finally learning the truth about her origins filled her with both excitement and fear. She couldn't help but wonder how her life might change if Henry truly was her father. The atmosphere in the Anderson estate was charged with anticipation. Martin, ever observant, watched from the sidelines, wary of the potential changes that confirmation of Emma's paternity could bring. He knew that if Emma turned out to be Henry's daughter, it could disrupt the entire household dynamic, and perhaps even his own position. The following days were filled with anxiety for everyone. Henry and Emma tried to maintain their routines, but the weight of the DNA test result loomed over them like a shadow. Every phone call, every knock at the door, sent Henry's heart racing. Finally, the day of the revelation arrived. The laboratory called to inform them that the results were ready. Henry and Emma went together to collect the envelope that held the answer to the question that had been haunting them. Back at the mansion, they returned to Henry's office, sitting across from each other with the envelope lying on the desk between them. Henry's hands shook as he held the envelope, and Emma could feel the tension in the air. They both knew that whatever the result, their lives were about to change forever. The moment of truth had arrived. "Let's open it together," Henry said, his voice trembling but filled with determination. Emma nodded, trying to suppress the overwhelming anxiety rising within her. With a steady hand, Henry opened the envelope and pulled out the document. His eyes scanned the words, and for a brief moment, time seemed to stop. "Emma," Henry began, his voice thick with emotion, "the result is positive. I am your father." For a few seconds, the world stood still. Emma looked at Henry, trying to process the weight of the revelation. Tears welled up in her eyes and began streaming down her face. She struggled to find the right words. "You are my daughter," Henry repeated, his voice now overflowing with emotion. He opened his arms and Emma rushed into his embrace. They both wept, a mixture of relief and joy engulfing them. "I've finally found my family," Emma whispered, feeling a sense of completeness she had never known. Henry gently held her face in his hands, his eyes glistening with tears. "We have so much time to make up for, but I promise we'll do it together." The news quickly spread throughout the estate. When Henry told his wife Laura about the confirmation, she was stunned for a moment before bursting into tears of happiness. "My daughter! Our daughter!" Laura exclaimed, rushing to embrace Emma. "I can't believe we finally found her." Laura's embrace was warm and filled with love, filling a void that Emma had always felt. She now had a mother, someone who loved her deeply and welcomed her with open arms. Joy spread through the Anderson estate. The staff, who had watched the recent changes with curiosity, now joined in the family's celebration. Martin, however, stood from a distance, trying to hide his true feelings about the situation. Emma began to integrate more deeply into the Anderson family's life. Henry and Laura included her in every part of family life, from intimate dinners to discussions about the family business. The transition wasn't easy for Emma, but her parents' unwavering support made it all more bearable. Henry, in particular, was determined to teach Emma everything he knew about the family's business. He understood that it would be a challenging road, but he believed that Emma had the strength and determination to succeed. "I want you to know, Emma," Henry said during one of their many conversations, "I'm here to support you every step of the way. You are part of this family, and together we'll build a bright future." Emma nodded, filled with gratitude and motivation. She knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was eager to learn and grow. With Henry and Laura by her side, she felt ready to face any challenge. Meanwhile, Martin watched everything with growing unease. He realized that Emma's presence would change the family dynamic, and consequently, his own position in the household. His discontent began to fester, and he couldn't help but feel a mixture of envy and fear about what the future held. The weeks following the revelation were a whirlwind of emotions and adjustments for Emma. She gradually adapted to her new life as a member of the Anderson family, participating in daily activities and learning about the family business. The estate, once simply a place of work, had now transformed into a true home for her. One evening, during a quiet dinner, Henry and Emma were discussing her childhood. Laura had already retired for the night, leaving father and daughter to continue deepening their bond. "Emma, there's something I've always wanted to know," Henry began, setting his fork aside. "Do you remember anything about the day you were found? Any memory that could help us understand what happened?" Emma frowned slightly, trying to piece together the vague and fragmented memories of her early childhood. "I was very young, but there's something I've never forgotten," Emma said slowly. "I remember a man. He took me to the park. I can't see his face clearly, but I remember he was nervous. He told me to stay there, that someone would come for me." Henry sat in silence, his heart aching at the thought of his little girl being left all alone. "This man, do you remember anything else about him? Any features? Anything that might help us identify him?" Emma shook her head. "Not much, just that he was nervous and seemed in a hurry. I think he was wearing a hat, but everything is really blurry." Henry took Emma's hand, his determination growing. "That's already something. We will find out who he was and what really happened. I'll contact Mark and ask him to dig deeper." The next day, Henry called Mark, sharing the new details Emma had revealed. Ever meticulous, Mark promised to dedicate every resource to follow up on this new lead. "I'll reopen the investigation, focusing on this description. We'll look at records, talk to witnesses, and see if anyone remembers anything from that day in the park," Mark assured him. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Emma was filled with a mix of relief and anxiety. Relieved that she had shared her memories with Henry, and reassured by his support, but anxious about what the investigation might uncover. Martin, however, watched everything with growing unease, uncertain about his future in the house. Mark's investigation quickly started to produce results. He interviewed former orphanage staff and people from the area near the park where Emma had been found. Slowly, small pieces of information began to surface, creating a clearer, though still incomplete picture. One afternoon, Henry received a call from Mark. "Henry, I've got some news. I found a witness who remembers seeing a man leave a little girl in the park around that time. He didn't get a clear view, but he confirmed the man was wearing a hat and seemed to be in a rush." Henry felt a mix of hope and apprehension. "That's good, Mark. Keep going. We need to find out who he was and why he left her there." Mark agreed, promising to continue following all leads. Meanwhile, Henry decided it was time to share the news with Emma. He called her into his office. and together they went over the latest developments. "We're making progress, Emma. Every small detail brings us closer to the truth," Henry said, holding her hand with affection. "We'll find out who did this and why. You deserve to know everything." Emma felt a wave of gratitude and determination. "Thank you, Dad. I know we'll uncover the truth together." As the investigation continued, Emma and Henry braced themselves for whatever revelations might come, united in their pursuit of the truth. They knew that no matter what they discovered, they would face it together, their bond growing stronger with every step. As the investigation unfolded, the dynamic in the Anderson estate began to shift. Now recognized as Henry's daughter, Emma was increasingly integrated into the family's daily life and business. Laura welcomed her with open arms, and Emma's presence brought new joy to the household. However, not everyone shared in that joy. Martin, the longtime butler, began showing signs of discontent. His once neutral expression now revealed a constant tension, especially as Emma took on more responsibilities in the family business. With each new task she was entrusted with, Martin's unease grew. One day, Henry noticed Martin's change in demeanor. The butler had become more brusque, particularly towards Emma. Henry knew it was time for a frank conversation. "Martin, can we talk?" Henry asked, his tone serious. Henry called the butler to his office. Martin entered, maintaining his usual rigid posture. "Yes, Mr. Anderson, how can I assist you?" Henry observed him for a moment before speaking. "I've noticed a change in you since Emma joined us. I want to know if something is bothering you." Martin hesitated, his expression hardening. "Mr. Anderson, I've served this family for 30 years. I've always considered my loyalty unquestionable, but since Emma's arrival, it feels like everything has changed." Henry frowned. "Martin, Emma is my daughter. She has every right to be here and to be part of the family business. If something else is bothering you, I need you to be honest with me." Martin shook his head, avoiding Henry's gaze. "Nothing, sir. I'm just adjusting to the changes." Henry wasn't entirely convinced, but decided not to push further for now. He sensed that something deeper was going on. Martin had always been a trusted figure, but his recent behavior raised suspicions. Meanwhile, Mark continued his investigation, determined to uncover the connection between the man who left Emma in the park and any others involved. Henry kept in frequent contact with the detective, anxiously awaiting updates. The tension in the Anderson household was palpable. Martin, feeling his position threatened, began acting more erratically. Small mistakes in his duties, sarcastic remarks, and suspicious glances became more frequent. Emma, although aware of Martin's strange behavior, stayed focused on her responsibilities, determined not to let anything disrupt her new life. Henry, however, knew that the truth about Emma's past was close, and he needed to stay vigilant. Martin's true nature was starting to surface, and Henry was ready to protect his family at all costs. A few weeks later, Mark called Henry with an urgent tone in his voice. "Henry, we need to meet. I've uncovered something significant about the man who left Emma in the park." Henry felt a chill run down his spine. "I'm on my way." In Mark's office, the detective presented a detailed dossier. "Henry, my investigation led to a disturbing discovery. The man who left Emma in the park 17 years ago was none other than Martin, your butler." Henry was stunned. "Martin? That's unbelievable. Do you have proof?" Mark nodded, handing Henry a collection of documents and photographs. "Witnesses have finally confirmed his identity, and old records show suspicious connections between Martin and the events surrounding your daughter's disappearance." Back at the mansion, Henry was a mixture of fury and betrayal. He called Martin to his office, gripping the evidence with trembling hands. "Martin, we need to talk," Henry said firmly. Martin entered, trying to maintain his usual calm demeanor, but Henry could see the nervousness in his eyes. "Yes, Mr. Anderson, how can I help you?" Henry threw the evidence on the table between them. "Explain this to me, Martin. How could you do this to my family?" Martin looked down at the documents, his face paling. "Mr. Anderson, I can explain." "There is no explanation that justifies what you did," Henry shouted, his anger rising. "You took my daughter and left her alone in a park. Why?" Knowing the full truth, Henry decided it was time to take action. He called his lawyer, Mr. Daniels, and together they gathered all the evidence against Martin and headed to the police station. The weight of the revelations was heavy, but Henry knew he couldn't delay seeking justice any longer. At the station, they were received by Chief Inspector Harris, a stern but fair man. Mr. Daniels presented the documents and evidence that implicated Martin. "Inspector Harris, we have compelling evidence that Martin, the butler for the Anderson family, was responsible for the disappearance of Mr. Henry's daughter 17 years ago," Mr. Daniels explained, handing over the dossier. The inspector leafed through the documents, examining the photos, testimonies, and records. His expression grew grim as he absorbed the gravity of the case. "These are serious accusations. We will proceed with the arrest immediately. Mr. Anderson, be prepared to formalize your complaint." "I'm ready to do whatever is necessary," Henry responded, his voice filled with unwavering resolve. Back at the estate, the tension was palpable. Martin was visibly anxious, sensing that something was about to unfold. When the police arrived, he tried to keep his composure, but his fear was evident. "Mr. Martin, you are under arrest for the abduction of Mr. Anderson's daughter," Inspector Harris announced. "You have the right to remain silent, but anything you say can and will be used against you in court." Martin did not resist as they placed handcuffs on him, sealing his fate. As he was led to the patrol car, he looked at Henry, his eyes filled with remorse and fear. "Mr. Anderson, I'm so sorry," Martin stammered. "I thought I was protecting my future, but I ended up destroying yours. I did this because I was afraid of losing my place here, my livelihood. When your daughter was born, I knew everything would change. I acted out of desperation, not malice." Henry stood firm, though Martin's words stirred something within him. "Martin, your desperation does not excuse what you did. You shattered our lives. Now justice will be served." At the police station, Martin was formally interrogated and confessed to his crimes, explaining in detail how fear and desperation led him to make such cruel choices. His confessions were recorded, and he was transferred to prison, where he would await trial. Henry returned home feeling a mix of relief and sadness. The betrayal of someone he had trusted deeply left a painful scar, but there was also a sense of justice finally being restored. When Emma learned of Martin's arrest, a surge of emotions washed over her. The truth had come to light, but the path to it had been filled with pain and bitter revelations. That night, Henry, Laura, and Emma gathered in the living room, embracing one another and finding comfort in their unity. The Anderson estate, once a place filled with secrets and betrayal, was now beginning to transform into a true home, one where truth and love could finally prevail. "We'll move forward," Henry said, looking at his wife and daughter. "Together, as a family. Nothing will ever separate us again." With the truth finally revealed and justice served, Henry, Laura, and Emma were determined to move forward and reclaim the time they had lost. The atmosphere in the estate began to shift, from constant tension to a sense of hope and renewal. In the days that followed, Henry decided to spend more time with his family. He reduced his work hours, delegating more responsibilities to his trusted executives. Emma, now fully integrated into the family business, also approached her new role with a fresh sense of purpose to strengthen the bonds that connected them. Every morning, the family gathered for breakfast, a ritual they had rarely shared in the past due to busy schedules. The conversations were light and filled with laughter, with Henry and Laura listening intently to Emma's childhood stories from the orphanage and her dreams for the future. "I want to learn everything about the family business, Dad," Emma said one morning. "But I also want us to have time to get to know each other better." Henry smiled, touched by his daughter's sincerity. "Of course, dear, we'll balance everything. I want you to be a part of every aspect of our lives." In the afternoons, they often spent time in the estate's garden, where Emma and Laura tended the flowers and planted new flower beds. The garden, which had always been lovely, seemed to bloom more vibrantly, reflecting the family's newfound energy. "This place grows more beautiful every day," Laura remarked while planting beside Emma. "It feels like a reflection of what we're building together." Emma smiled, feeling truly at home. "I'm so happy to be here with you. I never thought I'd find my family and so much love." At night, the family gathered in the living room to watch movies, play board games, or simply talk. Henry and Laura shared stories from their youth, while Emma eagerly listened, feeling more connected to her parents with each passing day. During one of these moments, Henry made a suggestion that brought tears to everyone's eyes. "Let's take a family trip. Something we've always wanted to do, but never found the time for." Laura immediately agreed. "That would be wonderful. We could go somewhere special and create new memories." "I'd love that," Emma added, excited by the idea. We could explore new places and enjoy every moment together. With the trip planned, the family began organizing every detail. The anticipation of new adventures together brought even more joy to the Anderson estate. Each family member contributed their ideas and wishes, making the planning process almost as exciting as the trip itself. The Anderson estate, once filled with secrets and tension, now echoed with laughter and love. The halls that had witnessed years of loneliness and sorrow were now vibrant with life and happiness. The painful past was slowly being replaced by a present full of promise and a future brimming with hope. "We're building something wonderful here," Henry said, holding Laura and Emma's hands as they stood in the garden, bathed in the moonlight. A home filled with love and joy. Emma looked at her parents, her heart filled with gratitude. "I'm so thankful to be here with you. Let's make every day count." Martin finally broke, his defenses crumbling. "I was desperate. When I found out your daughter was born, I feared losing my place here. I always thought that without her, you'd leave everything to me. I made a terrible mistake, and I regret it every day." Henry looked at Martin, his face a mix of pain and rage. "You destroyed our lives, Martin. I trusted you." "Forgive me, Mr. Anderson. I never intended for things to go this far," Martin pleaded. But Henry's emotions swirled in a whirlwind of betrayal. With that promise, the Anderson family prepared for a bright future, united by love and determined to make the most of every moment they had together. The estate, now truly a home, stood as a symbol of resilience and the power to transform pain into joy. Together, they knew they could overcome any challenge and build a life filled with happiness and hope. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the story. I'm sure the next video on your screen will move you just as much. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give it a like, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming videos. Sending you lots of love, and see you in the next story.